Unlock the program. Approved.
Since the coronavirus outbreak, the world of every vital commodity is the crisis for the
Some of the worst unemployment numbers in this country's history.
6.6 million plus people laid off in a single week.
As global lockdowns ease, the economy faces the greatest challenge in living memory.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? It's time for the final countdown. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's rock.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon to my respectable lecturer, Miss Jamhirah binti Abdullah, and all our fellow friends. Today we are from Group 5 are going to present about impact of COVID-19 toward international trade. Hi, my name is Nur Intafana binti Adman. As a first presenter, I would like to explain about the international trade and COVID-19. The activity of buying and selling goods and services in several countries is known as international trade. Through trade, countries can access goods and services that may not be accessible domestically and expand their market. Wuhan, China was the first country was reported by WHO where the COVID-19 outbreak happened to humans on 31 December 2019. Since COVID-19 has spread around the world, many sectors has been ordered to reduce operating as usual, and this also includes international trade. The level of security and operation of international trade has been increased to a stricter and more effective level so that the prevention of the spread COVID-19 can be controlled by the government. Some countries has completely closed their national border from operating as normal, and this has affected small countries to get supplies such as food, technology and medicine. Thank you. I would like to pass to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Diana Munira binti Yazid and I will be presenting about the issue of impacts COVID-19 towards international trade. The first issue of the impact is export and import are disrupted due to border closure. When borders are closed, export and import are impeded around the world. The global need for medical supplies and personal protective equipment increased after the COVID-19 incident. Lockdowns and other limitations on foreign transportation have had a double negative impact, disrupting supplies network around the world. For instance, in March of 2020, the European Union instituted its prior authorization framework for the export of protective equipment, while the Eurasian Economic Union prohibits the export of some foods and medical goods like disinfectant. The COVID-19 pandemic that's disrupted the global supply chain caused Malaysian trade in April 2020 to shrink 16.4% to RM 133.24 billion compared to the same period last year. The second issue is every country's focus on public health compared to economic. Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin declared the government had chosen to apply the movement control order all over the country until March 31st. At that time, Malaysia had entered the late containment phase and had already reported 553 positive instances of COVID-19, most of which were found in the Tabligh congregation cluster, with 12 patients requiring treatment in the ICU and respirator support. This includes religious, athlete, social and cultural events. The increasing prevalence of COVID-19 has a negative impact on the country's economy. The issue is also not affecting global trade but also domestic. Consider China, which Consider China, which, among other examples, institute a system for centralizing policy decision at the highest levels of government. Every major activity, policy, and measure taken during the outbreak to prevent or limit its spread was either developed on the spot or requiring the consent of law.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nisaa binti Isa. I will explain the third issue related to COVID-19 towards international trade, which is global food supply chain disruptions. Food supply chain is the most essential thing after medical supplies and equipment during the pandemic hit the world. However, due to the crisis, it led to global supply chain disruptions, particularly the food, which threatens food security around the world. This happens due to lockdown and transport restrictions within the countries, and border closures and export restrictions globally, caused to labor shortages by the enforcement of mobility limitations that aim for virus spreading prevention and to avoid close proximity during working. Many activities like agricultural and food production cannot be fully functioning. Also, poor efficiency in logistic and trading operations that become barriers to the international food supply chain. Even worse, some countries like Vietnam and Russia have implemented policy on food trade restrictions involving staple food, making the related countries badly affected by that ban. Since most Asian countries heavily rely on imports, it puts a risk on a huge number of the countries, which is essential to solve the issue of the disruptions in global food supply chain immediately to prevent any more.
Assalamualaikum and good morning to my dear Jamhira. I am Intan Najia. In this slide, I will explain about related theories toward international trade. Since the world is facing COVID-19, so the economic condition decreases because of some of issues. The best related theories with this impact of COVID-19 is Porter National Competitive Advantage Theory. The concept of Porter Theory of National Competitive Advantage is the ongoing development of ideas of global trade by the Harvard Business School's Michael Porter. In 1990, a new theory explaining national competitive advantage was created. According to Porter's argument, a country's ability to compete in a specific industry relies on that sector's ability to be innovative and modernized. He developed a theory to explain why some countries are more competitive in particular industries. Furthermore, affected countries need to improve and innovative their export goods. It is because they need to overcome losses that have caused by the impact of COVID-19. They need to be more creative and implement a new idea to upgrade their country to be more advanced and developed. For example, in April 2020, Malaysia exports registered decline of 23.8% year-on-year, the worst performance in the global financial crisis in 2009. The reduction are also due to preventive measures taken by the policymaker to slow down the spread of COVID-19. In order to overcome the issue, the country can reduce taxes on export goods. It is because countries need to do export activities so that their countries can generate additional income. Therefore, a low tax on export goods can help the country reduce their expenses and debt to the country.
Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera, salam UiTM di hatiku. And for my part, I will explain about the role of the state actor which is involved Malaysia, China and also Indonesia. First of all, the first country that we will discuss is Malaysia. The role of the Ministry of International Trade and Industry (MITI) at the time is that they make a statistical report on the Malaysian foreign trade that serve as a platform of a MITI authentic report regarding the deadline in the Malaysian import and export that has been recorded from March to April 2020. The deadline has been recorded and MITI managed to analyze that distributions that main one is to manufacturing activity and the movement of the good globally. Secondly, the country that we will discuss, which is China. China is facing the worst crisis of the spread of the COVID-19 infections since the first day of the outbreak in the country in late of 2019. China's efforts and role in redeveloping their foreign trade is by making a strict control to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Evidence can be presented when the cases in other countries have soared, but in China, COVID-19 cases has decreased, and China has become the first country to recover and can be prevent COVID-19. Last country for the role of the state actor, which is Indonesia. The world has been shocked by the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, economic development in Indonesia has decreased due to the COVID-19 pandemic at the beginning of 2020. Indonesia emphasized the importance of international cooperation, both multilateral and regional, in addition to strengthen the national economy in driving global economic growth amid pressures caused by the COVID-19. Bank Indonesia also support the implementations of the coordinated policy mix response, both in terms of the fiscal, monetary, and structural aspect to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the economy in Indonesia. That's all for my part. Thank you for lending me your ear. So for the next, let's go to the role of the non-state actor.
It's been an absolute pleasure to welcome my colleagues, the DGs of WIPO and WHO, and colleagues, staff members, to be able to discuss our tripartite collaboration on trying to make IP accessible to our member states.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Afif Hakimi from Group 5. Today, I will continue our group presentation regarding the role of non-state actor during the emerging of COVID-19. The first non-state actor that we will go through is World Trade Organization, WTO. During of COVID-19, WTO played an important role to help the members of the countries regarding challenges of international trade. Firstly, by helping members of the countries to coordinate their trade policy. The WTO organization held several forums and discussions among the countries, such as General Council meeting and special meeting of WTO committees on agriculture, to find a suitable solution due to restriction of the export of commodities, including medicine, diagnostic, and food product, to address critical shortage at the national level. By 23rd April 2020, 80 countries and separate custom territories had introduced export ban, and more countries following suit. However, after the discussion, they find a win-win solution for this issue. Secondly, another important function of WTO is to maintain the transparency. Countries who are members of WTO are required to immediately notify any export restriction implemented by them. By April 2020, only 13 WTO members out of 39 had notified the measure under export restriction, and it gave a difficult situation for the country to face this crisis together. To overcome the lack of transparency, the WTO compiled a list of COVID-19 related trade measures concerning goods, service, and IPR that were implemented by countries and uploaded to the website for stakeholders to access. By doing this action, it can control the transparency among the WTO members. Lastly, the role of WTO during the COVID-19 is to monitor the policy response of countries through the trade policy review mechanism of the WTO. This mechanism is an instrument affording opportunities for a process of collective evaluation of trade policy and practice of individual members. Next, we will continue with the second of non-state actor that play a crucial role to help the countries on international trade matters because of the COVID-19, which is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Firstly, the OECD advised their members to boost confidence in trade and global market by improving transparency. The OECD shared the information on trade-related countries' action on COVID-19 with the WTO colleague and assessing the likely impact of this action to help support policymakers dealing with the crisis. Secondly, the OECD coordinate with the government and private sector to keep global supply chain going, especially for essential. An important priority is keeping the key supply chain for essential goods for crisis, including medical supplies, food product, is open and functioning. Lastly, the OECD urged the members to avoid making things worse. There are many unavoidable costs in the current pandemic. All the more reason is to avoid action that add to cost for trader and consumer. Chief among these is the need to avoid export restriction on essential goods such as medical equipment and especially food product. During phase of the COVID-19, more than 60 countries have restricted export of essential goods and increasingly agriculture and food product. The lesson of the food price crisis of 2007 and 2008 is that export restrictions are caused for self-inflicted harm, undermining food security for everyone.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nisaa binti Jamal. I will be presenting about the recommendation. Cross-border commerce has been interrupted as a consequence of COVID-19, which has had a negative impact on trade costs. Therefore, this is the first suggestion that the government should take action by practicing safe cross-border trade with effective control procedures and protocols. This implies that the government may have to re-evaluate its sourcing strategies, which might lead to a global manufacturing reshuffle that could have significant effects on growing economies. Furthermore, it has been suggested that governments will need to reconsider the list of strategic products for which there is a demand for local manufacturing, or they will need to put new sourcing limits on corporations. For instance, the availability of digital infrastructure to reduce productivity hits in pandemics, or improvements to trade facilitation practices to minimize the scope for disruption related to face-to-face processes. A growing number of businesses are beginning to examine the possibility of diversifying their sources of supply in order to reduce the risk related with putting an excessive amount of dependence on a single country or a select group of important suppliers. This involves the investigation of potential new regional and local suppliers, as well as the implementation of initiatives to shorten supply chains and minimize the amount of time needed for transit and custom clearance. Even though that custom rules often stick to the fundamentals of international frameworks, local interpretation and practice from custom will nonetheless lead to varied needs for various markets. As a result, organizations should review their procedures for custom compliance and make any necessary adjustment before establishing any new supply chains. Next, the second recommendation that the government may put into action is by increase export quotas of essential goods and avoid restriction in exporting goods. Exports are a major source of economic prosperity since they encourage more investment, which in turn encourage technical progress and expanded imports. In turn, economic development may lead to greater expansion of exports by encouraging the use of technology and raising the amount of imported goods required as inputs for manufacturing targeted towards export markets. In fact, primary exports of goods and services can speed up economic growth because they can be used as inputs in domestic production. According to Khaled and Chamberlain 2021, export limits might be considered as an essential strategy to secure the public support of multilateral trade agreements in specific instances. However, unrestricted markets and unexpected export limitation during a pandemic are incompatible. In addition, a trade surplus is a factor that helps to the expansion of country's economy. When there are more exports, it indicates that there is a high level of production from a country's factories and industrial facilities, as well as a greater number of people who are being employed in order to keep these factories operating. When manufacturer is exporting a significant amount of products, this also amounts to a flow of funds into the country. This helps to boost demands for goods and services, which in turn leads to economic growth. So when export and imports are both showing growth, the economy is said to be in a healthy condition.
So the last recommendation is to reduce tariff barriers. It is suggested to impose the policy that emphasizes tariff reductions as a plan of global recovery in international trade due to the pandemic. Throughout this way, it enables productivity growth of the countries, particularly in economy. Since many countries suffered economically, therefore, by this way it will help many firms to get back on track in trading and improve trade facilitation at the same time, in ensuring global supply chain keep flowing without any disruptions. In order to reform trade policy by adopting tariff reduction, collaboration of WTO, OECD, and countries involved in international trade need to be established to ensure effective measures to be achieved.
Shut down the program. Thank you.